Okay, welcome everybody to our biweekly free webinar. I am your co-host along with Adebayo Fasanya. I'm George Ozoude. Every 2 weeks, we like to get on the Zoom and reconnect with everyone and talk about different concepts of financial freedom and financial literacy. And so obviously over the past 2 weeks, there's been major changes to the landscape across the United States with the election. And tonight's call is going to be looking at potential impacts of the incoming Trump presidency. So we're excited to present this topic, timely topic. We are looking forward to making this way more conversational because obviously we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know everything. We just like to have open discussions to think more clear. And we welcome everyone's input. We're going to be asking for everyone's input as we go through these topics tonight and to see what everybody's thinking. But I want to just introduce myself as we normally do. I'm an orthopedic surgeon based in Houston, Texas. I have my own practice for the last 3 years now. It's a private direct pay solo practice. I've been in real estate since 2016. I've invested in a lot of real assets across many different classes, including obviously residential multifamily, but also in medical office, in mineral rights, and in agricultural land. I started investing at that time and went on to invest in over 25 deals as a limited partner, and now as a general partner in 4 deals, accounting for about 800 doors and approximately 75 million in assets under management. I started a syndication private equity firm to help other physicians invest the same way as I have. And so this is real important to us, growing community and getting other physicians aware of these options and on the road to financial freedom. And so that's a little bit about me. I'll kick it over to Bio to introduce himself as well.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Fasanya. I'm a pulmonary critical care physician. I'm based in our little town, Fort Smith in Arkansas. And I've also been in real estate for about 10 years now. If you count in time that I'm actually more active in real estate. I'm an operator, which means I also do my own deals, and also I invest passively. I focus on real assets, which means that it's not just real estate. So I do any real assets. It's interesting to me. So I've done at least 3 funds of oil and gas at this point. We have about over 1,500 multifamily units with over 180 million under management between deals that were like co-GP and GP on. I've also done multiple business acquisitions, and we also did luxury senior living, 2 of those, and we have 6 self-storages, 1 boat storage, 6 warehouses, and 3 offices. Spread across, but main focus was more multifamily and oil and gas, and now we're looking into industrial too, even hotels. I'm cut across. Our goal is to help fellow physicians achieve financial freedom. And I'm excited about this topic because George and I we banter back and forth. We might have a slight preference to one than the other, but for most part, we try to be objective in our discussion and try to figure out how to make money, regardless of who is the president. And that's why we decided this topic would be a very good one. Yeah.
So that's a great disclaimer. This is definitely not a political conversation. This is just looking at the macro and how to just take advantage of whoever is in office to try to see where the puck is going. Yeah, we're definitely going to jump into it. Again, we encourage you to leave comments or questions in the chat. You can even come off. This is like open discussion. You can come off camera or on camera and off mute and jump in. We're going to even throw the questions out there to you guys and hear your take. We really are interested in hearing everyone's take. We should get into it. Okay, so Trump's coming into office, and that can have many impacts. We've listed a couple of things that we think can be impacted. We're going to just jump right into the first one. We have tax policies, and regulations. So, Bio, I wanted to throw it to you. What is your take on how Trump's second presidency will impact tax policies and regulations, and then how that will impact real estate investing as in general?
Thank you. This is based on the last presidency and also based on overall Republican tendencies. So it almost, to me, doesn't really matter who is there. They almost always do the same thing that their kind of party does, right? So they're going to do something a little bit different, but they will just follow the same kind of, no matter what they say, they will end up doing almost the same thing. So, I mean, for tax cuts, how do you see some tax cuts one way or the other? Either, I think mostly for businesses, but some of it might also be for the main street. And for me, last time we just got started, right? We don't have as much assets, as much money, and as much influence last presidency. But this time we're a little bit more poised to take advantage more based on the business, right? So I think, yeah. So I do think, of course, it will lead to more money from the business owners, more money on the main street, and I believe it's going to cause help with more investment. I think the risk will be on again, because we do notice that raising money was a little bit more difficult. I'm not going to lie to you guys, towards the middle of the year. How easy it was to raise money, a couple of years ago versus this year. And a lot of operators reach out to us like, oh, can you help us? So versus last year where everybody was just flaunting, or a couple of years ago, everybody just putting money into deals. So yeah, I think there'll be tax cuts. I think there will be some for business. I actually do think I think it's like below 20% for sure. And Canada is supposed to be a social country, and they have lower business tax. So I do think I think US I think it's gonna go lower. So
Yeah,
more money.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And then go ahead.
I think this is just going to push economic activity in general, because the opposite is true. When there's just more taxing, you get contraction. So the less taxation, you're going to get more economic activity. So you're going to get more entrepreneurs, more large companies taking risk, more mom and pops taking risk, more smaller outfits getting out there on the risk curve, either creating businesses, acquiring businesses, creating capital gains for themselves through these businesses. And so you're going to see just more people coming into the space, which also, as we've seen the last 5 or 6 years, the more people come in the space as like operators, business owners, it pushes the values of those businesses and assets up. And one of those is residential real estate, whether it's single family homes or multifamily homes. They're essentially businesses that sit on real estate. Multifamily is a business. And so I think you're going to see upward pressure on those type of assets just from this. Specifically, we have his policies that we foresee on capital gains and his policies on 1031 exchange and even depreciation. So those are 3 aspects that could be impacting. There's probably more, but off top of head, we're seeing the impact on capital gains. We're likely going to see 1031 exchange with maintained, right? Because I think that was at risk of being wound down with a Democratic presidency, let's call it, or administration. And then we'll talk a little later, but I think depreciation, we may even see like the return of 100% bonus depreciation, which, by the way, if it comes back, it could be retroactively applied, right? Meaning the sunsetting that was happening over the last 2 to 3 years, actually, you may be able to go back and reclaim 100% bonus depreciation on some of those taxes. And what do you think about that?
Yes, I do. I think I forgot the exact month. I posted it in the group, WhatsApp group. It was stalled in the Senate. So the bill was 48 to only 48 votes, needed 60 votes. It's not one of those that needed only like 51 votes. So it might still be a difficult thing to pass through the Senate because you're going to need at least 7 Democrats to agree because there's 53, right? Republicans. So you still need the buy-in. You still have to play ball a little bit. Executive orders could be done, but it's going to only last short term. So yeah, I think it's a possibility because we were waiting on that vote, for the taxes this year, before we even filed the tax return, thinking maybe it's going to pass. So yeah, it got stalled. So right now it's in the Senate, still there, and they can vote on it at any time. Yeah, I think it's going to come back. That's my bet. And then,
So
yeah.
I have a curiosity because at the end of this call, I don't think we'll have a crystal ball and know exactly what's going to happen. And then one thing Bio and I realized as we prepared for this is that there's forces pulling for and against, bullish versus bearish, even with each of these policies and whatever we're suspecting will change. So I'm curious, are there angles that we haven't thought about? Even though we know what his approach is to tax policy, could there be a negative effect on a bearish effect that we're missing? And just curious to throw that out to the crowd here. Is there something that we're not thinking about that actually would make sense why this would be bearish for multifamily as an asset, thinking in terms of investors? If you're an investor in multifamily and single family and any kind of real estate, is it actually not beneficial? Is it a bad thing for those investors if capital gains tax goes down or if 1031 exchange is still upheld? So I think we have a question.
Yeah, so you're asking for being optimistic. We do have some time. We can skip to one of the other one just to know that we're not. We look at every option, but the first one we had to talk about was just the taxes. But we do have immigration policies, which it could be a negative impact, just depending on how you look at it. So we can go over that next if there's no more contribution in terms of tax. If anybody wants to talk about tax, and the tax is pretty clear cut. Tax is gonna be lower, and most of the things that favor real estate, even if it's for personal reason for Trump, it's gonna help real estate regardless. I don't like to say that, but it does real estate itself. So whatever the motivation is, that is gonna happen.
All right.
So if there's no questions on that, so I'll throw it to George about immigration.
Okay. So I think this is a real good example of how this can have both positive and negative consequences. I think Trump's stance on immigration is pretty clear, but what would that mean? And the reality is the ways a lot of these real estate projects get built is through labor that's supplied by immigration, by immigrants who come in and do the type of work that ends up resulting in single family homes, multifamily homes, commercial property. And so with that supply of labor potentially being affected, the cost to deliver these products are going to go up. So that actually could have a negative impact on the ability to deliver these properties. It might slow down the actual economic activity around them. Because one thing is for sure, there's many different price points that a builder has to consider whenever they're developing a new project or buying an existing project and going in and renovating it. They have to consider those inputs. And if those inputs, those expenses are too high, it'll deter them from taking that risk. So if the cost of labor, the cost of materials, the cost of money, right? The interest rate, which we were just talking about, if those things are too high, this will just kill the incentive to go ahead and start these projects. Bio, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I've been on, and now I'm doing some construction now, and then I've done a lot of renovation, and labor is one of the major issue. I do have few people we call those boots on the ground that I can just call at any time for $20 an hour. They can basically do almost anything for me, So they'll go cut locks, they'll they remove everything from the storage, they'll fix the gate. So those are the labor that, well, no matter how you feel about it, the objective thing on the ground is the fact that yes, labor cost, I can't find anybody else to do it at those costs. So that's one. Another thing is the housing demand. So of course, no matter how you got into the country, whether you're legal, illegal, or you at least have a place to live. So I do believe that the demand, at least for Class C properties, it might be lower. So I just don't know how much, right? So all of this there's going to be multiple factor. Of course, you're going to decide for yourself what is the net vector. After considering everything, do you think it's going to be ultimately net positive, net negative? But yeah, it's going to be impact on demand. They say there's 6 million that, in the past 4 years. I'm not sure if it's legal or legal immigrants, but that's a lot. That's a huge amount of the population. Where are they living right now?
For sure. I like to also add all these different ways it can impact if we overall look at like supply and demand, it actually on the investor side, you have to always consider perspective. On the investor side, this actually could be bullish in a good way for you because if you're investing in already existing assets in real estate, and then there's a limit on the new supply that can come in because the cost is too high, the cost of labor is too high, that can actually be bullish for your asset, right? Because the demand is going to theoretically stay high. I think there's been plenty of stats that show that we're underhoused, where we don't have enough housing. Any shock or hurdle to deliver new housing is actually beneficial to the existing asset owners and holders. If you're holding assets, this could be bullish in one way. But those immigrants also require housing, right? So you're removing some of the supply for people who are potential renters, home buyers, and therefore, or excuse me, demand. Sorry. You're removing some of the demand. And that has the opposite effect. In one way, this is a perfect example of like how one specific policy can have two different impacts on you as an investor. So it's just about, Bio said, the net effect. And we don't have that crystal ball. Overall, I think Bio and I think overall it's going to still be bullish, the net effect. And that simply comes down to the fact that we are already undersupplied. So that's a fact. This conversation might be different if we had a better parity and matching of the supply and demand, i.e. if there were already more homes available. But the reality is we're something like between 3 and 4 million homes underbuilt. So that's our starting point. And now how do all these moves that are going to be made over the next 4 years impact the landscape starting from that position, right? And so overall, we think it's going to be net bullish, even though the immigration policies might get more strict. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you guys should contribute.
Yeah, we'd love to hear. We already talked taxes and immigration. Please feel free to come off and share about either of those.
Yeah, you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris Archie here. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I want to come in here because, and thanks, by the way, George and Bayo, for this wonderful work. Missed a lot in recent weeks, and I so regret that. So here in Dallas, where I live, in recent weeks, or rather recent months, the renting market has slowed down significantly. I'm not sure of what are the factors, what the main factors are, but inflation is what most people have cited as the driving force for the slowness in people renting. With the incoming administration, I personally have a concern that inflation is going to rise for reasons I assume a lot of us can actually tell. This is not a political comment, by the way, but I'm scared of a situation where a repeat of the drop-down economy where you give tax cut to the rich and expect the economy to grow with that. It's going to cause inflation. It caused inflation in 2000 and the early 2000s, and also caused inflation 8 years ago. So we've already seen that kind of policy and the effect it has on inflation. So my fear is if people are not renting more because inflation is high, the cost of rent is high, and then there's increased inflation with the new administration's policies, this is going to actually have a negative impact on the whole housing and renting market. My thoughts, just wonder what others think about it. Thank you.
Yeah. I can talk to all the properties we have in Texas right now. All of them are at least 90% occupied right now, 94. Self-storage, still full. I think it might be class 2 of property. So the question is, where are these people living now? Are they homeless?
Yeah.
People still have to live somewhere. It might just be a shift of class A, start going to class B, start going to C, and C goes to mobile home or something like that. I don't know. But people have to still live somewhere. I think housing is one of the most expensive things in America versus the world. I've lived in multiple places. I've lived in the Caribbean, Canada, Nigeria, and out of like how much you make, America is like about 1/3 of your money goes to rent. It's such a high amount, and people are used to that in a way. So I'm just trying to say overall, I see what you're saying. However, I do not see it in our own, like in our portfolio so far. We do believe that in the next 2 years, just like before, that there might be oversupply due to a lot of permits being obtained right now. People that slow down building because of the inflation, and many projects were stopped. And then we started to see activities again. People started to complete the project that are like stuck halfway through. So it's possible. The inflation is still remains to be seen. Now we're going to talk about the tariffs. So now we can talk about that too on the cost of building. So that might be our next topic, our next one to talk about. So I do believe that might raise, if it's not done properly and very little margin of error with the tariff, that it would increase the cost of building overall. So yeah, I agree that inflation might maybe go up, but I just don't see what people are going to do. Where are they going to go?
I think Chris's comment is really good because for me, it highlights the importance of considering the perspective. And so I actually am curious if, Chris, if you're meaning that it's going down in terms of the amount of occupancy, which is what Bio alluded to, or the amount of rent growth, or which class? Are you talking Class A newer builds or Class C? Because I think when you consider like which platform you're viewing from, then the conversation could change, right? The discussion could sound a lot different. Yes, inflation's going up. To me, that makes home affordability, like single family home, primary resident affordability, more out of reach, right? And this would increase pressure on the rental side because, like Bio said, you have to live somewhere, even if it's co-living. I think we're starting to not co-living or generational living, multi-generational living, where you just got 3 generations in one apartment or something, or 3 generations in a single family rental. I think if you're talking from that perspective, there's probably been more demand on rentals. I think we are currently in a period where there's a lot of supply being delivered. And so from what I've seen in my portfolio, we haven't had much rent growth, even though occupancy is high because they have to live somewhere. But the rent growth is not necessarily there. I do think that'll change. Like Bio said, it comes in cycles. So in the next 2-3 years, you're going to see that drop off that he mentioned. And then the rent prices will have to go up because it's a supply demand math equation again. Unless we're not accounting for something, and maybe this is what you're alluding to, like, is everybody just moving in they got roommates now? They got multi-generational living. You got 6 guys post-college living in a 3-bedroom apartment. Curious if you had any clarification on what you mean when you see Dallas market is the rental market is going down. And I know Chris had a question. Oh,
yeah.
go for it, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, not to dominate the conversation. I was in a meeting with a group of landlords 2 weeks ago, and that's what everybody was observing. And I was also at one of the Dallas, DHA, Dallas Housing Authority, where they do Section 8 rental. And I spoke with a couple of landlords, and that was all the observation, that the market is slow. Now, I don't know whether this is a seasonal thing, which I doubt, because that's the first time I'm hearing that for too many people at the same time, or whether it's just part and parcel of the economic shrinking has been going on for the past 4 years or thereabout. But I'm just thinking of how this, if the inflation, which is coming down, goes up again, how it's going to have impact. And of course, you guys say something about how immigration will impact the industry. Yeah, maybe, I don't know what classes actually, as Bayo kind of was asking, classes where these things are more of affecting, but we have a multi-family 300 and something unit property here in Dallas that I syndicated in, and we're still having the same experience there. It's a Class C property very close to the airport, but the occupancy as of 2 years ago, or rather last year, was about 90 something percent. Now it's dropped down to about 80 something percent, actually below 80. That's the place mainly dominated by Mexicans, and they are living more and more, even when the new administration has not come in. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud and wondering what the impact will be.
Yeah, appreciate it. Those are great comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, it will also be regional too, because most of I'm actually going to correct myself. We don't have anything in Dallas right now, mostly Houston. So it could also be the area, the local markets. As you said, it's dominated by Mexican. It's one group of people, so it could have a big impact.
Yeah. I know Chris came off mute, excuse me. I wanted to give him a chance to introduce his comment or question.
Now, in terms of the immigration, I know we're concerned about what the effect of a significant number of people being be. Recall from the last presidency that one of the things that was proposed at that point in time was a comprehensive immigration reform. As much this go round, but just curious as to how, if I know there's this threat of mass deportation. However, public opinion becomes very fickle, and I could easily see where people may not. It's easy whenever you say it, but when people start seeing people actually being loaded on buses of the nature, I could easily see the American opinion reverse and say, hey, this is not what we meant. And I wonder if this concept of getting a comprehensive immigration bill might take place. And like I said, that might change a lot of our assumptions going forward. Where, like I said, if you find some way, whether it's a worker's permit, path to citizenship, whatever that might be, that might mute a lot of the worst of what we're assuming from mass deportation. Because a part of me is these individuals that are coming in, they're going to want to win in 2 years, and you can't afford, like I said, a lot of disruption in a negative way. So I don't know. It's just something that's crossing my mind. I'm not sure exactly how that would happen, but of course, what that would look like. But that would also stabilize a lot of what we're talking about, at least the worst of it, from what I can see. So
I gotta agree with you. I think the term is easier said than done, right? It's a talking point that's really big for him. Are we not considering all the second order downstream consequences of that? What it looks like in real time and the longer term impact of it. And if he's real, I think it almost conflicts with some of his other intended policies of I'm assuming he wants to bring more housing to Americans. He wants to bridge that gap. Somebody's got to build those houses. You know what I mean? So it's easier said than done. I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, because like I said, building new houses, I think there was a talk of building a new city or something of that nature. So that requires a lot of people. So I don't know. Like I said, I just wonder when it comes to execution if it's going to look a lot different than what it looked like on the campaign trail.
I agree.
Last time it looked different, obviously. So each sides never really get to do completely what they want to do. So it's yet to be seen, and there's no way for us to know that. We can all just speculate. But I do know that he himself has real estate. I always, when I think about people, I look at not much what they say, and I look at what they stand to gain too, personally. So I know he's building, you know. So, and no matter how much the rhetoric is, I'm sure he uses some cheap labor. So it's what it is. Everybody knows there's only a few people that can do a roof over the weekend. Those kind of workers.
Exactly.
They work 20 hours. Without saying much, I'll just say I think it's going to be muted, but like we said, it's just all conjectures. We'll see where everything lands. But like you said, everybody wants, in some way, the economy to improve. If you do it and you feel like it's going to ruin the economy, then you're going to try to reverse some of it. Yeah. Anything else on that? Because we do have some few more topics. We didn't really talk about deregulation.
That's a good one.
The deregulation, two talking point is less restrictive zoning and development law, right? So that's one thing for sure. It's not Trump, it's Republican in general. There's more of the deregulation. And you could think of it positive or negative, like some of the environmental ones, right? You could say, oh, you know what? For the longer term of the health of the country and the world, let us have some of these environmental laws into building the house, right? That every house must have these nice, healthy things when you build it. Or more likely, they'll deregulate in such a way that it allows you to build much easily, but then will forgo having a paint that prevent mold. Like all those extra regulations is going to be gone for most part, in my opinion. So we can talk about it. For me, I just think less regulation means more houses, more people into the development. So you can always think about it in two ways, right? So for you, as someone that already have multi-family, lot of units, it might bring more housing to the market, decrease the rent, right? You can think of it that way. Or you can think of it as, okay, now there are a lot of more single family homes. People can afford more homes and things like that. It's mixed, just like every other thing. But I think at least it would improve housing shortage for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So it's bullish for supply. So therefore, as an investor, when you're gonna have more supply, this will have the opposite effect. Yeah, but I think of this deregulation in a couple of different aspects. There's especially living in Houston, there's no zoning here. And so that's like the epitome of deregulation. There's no rules to say you can't put a multifamily right next to a gas station, right next to an industrial. And so I think that just encourages development and economic activity. So more supply, therefore maybe bearish on values as an investor, right? That's bearish, right? Because there's going to be more supply. I think of something I didn't realize was the cost of permitting, which is part of local state level regulations. But for multifamily, it's actually 41% of the building costs to put up large multifamily. It goes to regulation, which blows my mind. And for single family homes, 25% of regulatory cost, permits, zoning, marketing to get the favor of the local town, the community. That's a lot. And if you can lower that regulatory cost burden, then you're going to again see a upward pressure on supply. It's going to improve the amount of homes that come onto the market. Yeah, that's how I think about it. It's actually a little bullish for the gap though, which is always a good thing. I appreciate that, right? I want more people to be able to get into homes, but as an investor,
that's all I say. Sometimes it's a mixed bag. I know we're not talking about oil and gas, right? Like when I see the price of oil down, I know my investment is down. But everybody's happy. Oh, nice price of gas. But if the price of gas is up, my investment is like doubling. So it's just what it is.
And I'll
Sometimes you
and
wonder
I'll
what to wish for.
and I'll add again, I'm not so worried, even though I would say bearish for investors on that. Remember, we're still the starting point is 3 to 4 million homes undersupplied. I think we got some room to absorb some more supply. And it's regional, so think about where you're specifically located. Take that into consideration.
Yeah, true. A little bit more just personal experience from regulation, like depending on where you are, like in Toronto, Scarborough, Canada, we have a multi-family, a skyscraper we're trying to build, and it was almost for 2 years. We have to go through some regulation because some guy does not want a skyscraper in front of his church or something like that. And it was like a 2 year lawsuit back and forth. And so that kind of stalled the excitement of the project. Just like, man, also with so much of the regulation, if you make one mistake, like the 10 units I renovated, we made one non-electrician essentially touched one of just the wire, didn't even do much. And the guy knows how to do it. But then the electrician came. I'm like, I need to inspect, but I did not do that section. So we have to tear down all the drywall, everything. I basically start over because of that. So while it's good for safety, but at the same time, it does definitely increase the cost. And every single thing that has to be done has to be checked. So once you do a certain one, then the inspector comes, check it. Then you do the next one, inspector comes, check it. It's just like, why don't we just do everything and just come check it when you know it's a licensed electrician doing the job? It makes no sense. That's regulation for you. So it's just the way how you want to look at it. So it makes work easier for renovations, building.
For sure.
If
All right. Next topic. I love this one. This one's a good one, is interest rates and monetary policy. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? First of all, you got to almost decide like what kind of impact is Trump going to have on like the Federal Reserve chair, right? And we have 4 years of evidence of how he treated the last Federal Reserve chair or the current Federal Reserve chair. He leaned on them a lot to lower the interest rates in order to improve the perception of the economy, because I think that's really what it is. It's the perception. It's not the actual real economy. But when interest rates are lower, there's more economic activity, whether it's productive or not, right? We're just printing money and putting it into these assets that are like paper assets, stock market, bonds, Forex. But the headlines look like the economy could be booming when money is cheap. And so that might be his higher priority, his image of a booming stock market and therefore a booming economy. Either way, and this goes beyond Trump, my thought is whether they're Democrat or Republican, I think we're just in a macroeconomic environment where we have to, or not have to, but either party, either side would continue to spend money. They will continue to print money. And I think that actually has a bigger impact on inflation, bigger than just the Fed Reserve's Fed or interest rate policy. I think the government spending is going to be high. In fact, I think it'll be higher with Trump than not. I think that he's going to spend more, and I think he's going to push to have interest rates as low as possible to stimulate economic activity. And I think that will be very, very bullish for real assets. And I think we're already seeing that. We're seeing the effect in things that people think will protect them from inflation, equities.
crypto.
So we're seeing it in the bond market. We're seeing a rise in the interest rate in the bond market. And I think that's indicative of the sentiment that inflation's coming. So what are your thoughts, Bio? And what are your thoughts, everybody? Leave it in the chat. Come off mute.
I think Chris alluded to that, thinking inflation is going to go up. And I think borrowing, I think just has to be done in a strategic, for example, many people from all my readings believe that the neutral interest rate is like 5.5, right? So that we're never going to get to 2. anymore, right? So if we keep it there, perhaps we can stimulate the economy at the same time, keep the inflation long-term at bay, but not if you continue to drop too much over time. So I think it needs to drop but I don't think it has to drop all the way down. So that's just what I would think in terms of monetary policy and inflation. So, so interest rates just have to be dropped in a reasonable manner.
Can I ask you this, and along with everybody else, do you think he can impact the Fed decision making, or do you feel like the Fed is independent of it? And that's a question for everybody. Does the president actually drive the Fed Reserve policy? We got one no.
I think Ola said no. I think the influence humans, that's why humans are different than robots. I believe that humans are, yeah. So I think that's the take I take too. It shouldn't, but it does. So that's what I would probably think also, that if somebody keep pressuring you, keep calling you, keep sending you data of how and why you should lower the interest rate. You have to be super strong to say no, all the way. That's just my take.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if it's going to have that much impact on the Fed chair. You have to understand that this is the second term technically, so he cannot be a president again. He's a lame duck president. And as a result of that, I don't think he's going to have that much power. The last time around, I think he was able to push more, and that was because of COVID, and he had a lot of impact on the Fed chair. But I just don't see how he's going to be able to have the same effect this time around.
Good point about the lame duck.
That's true. I never thought of it that way. So there's nothing to really worry about in terms of the chair. And I think they're independent. I was reading into it also that they're supposed to be you can't even be fired by the president, something like that. Just check it. I'm not like a pro in that policy, but I was just reading about it, that can a president just be like, get this one out of there and get me one that listens. So apparently you can't just do that. So
go ahead. I think Steve.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think what you've seen the last couple of months, they did the 0.5 point drop and then also another drop here, right? And so the Fed can drop rates and the market doesn't have to agree. And I think absolutely Trump is going to pressure publicly the Fed and try to do what he does. And the Fed's not always right either, right? The transitory comments, they completely missed that on the other side. So you got politicians that are going to be politicians, and the market's going to do what the market's going to do. And I think a lot of these policies, tariffs, and a lot of the other things, we've got to watch as it goes how it actually impacts. There's a lot of moving parts. And there's things that are certainly going to be inflationary. There's definitely going to be spending on certain things. But when you drop oil prices down, which I think is going to be a major goal, and that's where a lot of the deregulation is going to take place, the ripple effect might offset a lot of impact from tariffs or other things like that. So I think we got to watch and see, and that's a good point. It's not going to be that, it never really is, right? The midterms are always right around the corner. So our tendency is to overreact and stuff moves slowly. It never gets fully put in before there's a pushback the other way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I even saw there's ways to, even though it looks like they got control of Congress now, there's always like a way to the checks and balance. And I forget exactly what it was, but I think Mitch McConnell is like engineering some way to kind of still make it difficult for Trump's second term presidency to like roll out all his agenda and his policies. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. And great point about deregulation in oil, because oil impacts everything, right? So if the price of oil drops, if we're not fighting some of these wars, where the price of oil is going to drop and that will impact everything downstream from real estate to medical, a lot of moving parts. There were some comments here.
Yep. It seems like we might need part 2 because it's already 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many things we didn't touch. We didn't touch infrastructure. Just throwing it out there. We won't tariffs, foreign investment. That's a huge one, right? And so there's so much that can be impacted. And oil and gas. Should we read some of these comments?
Yeah. Right.
Companies will benefit from cheaper loans, making it easier to finance expansions, invest in new projects, hire more employees, increase spending by consumers, and business boost economic growth. Agree, great for real estate, lower interest rates, reduce the cost of borrowing for home buyers, making monthly mortgage payments more affordable. Yes, we expect property prices to rise, right? So that's that plus minus, right? Which one is it?
Where are you? Are you an investor or are you the public?
Yeah,
Do you want
what's
to
your
buy a
perspective?
house or
Right.
do you want your investment to go up? Sometimes you're both and you're
Yep.
just stand in the middle. Maybe it's better that way. You gain
Yeah.
one way or the other. You push one way or the other. I mean, for
I,
all the properties already bought, I'm happy. I
I
think
think
we're sitting pretty.
Yeah. I think a big shift is just end home buyers, primary residents, looking at their monthly cost as opposed to the overall price, right? I think that's the bigger impact, the number that makes the bigger impact for them. So whichever scenario is going to give them the lowest monthly burden, I think has the biggest impact on them to get into home ownership. So they may never pay off the house, but at least they can afford the mortgage every month.
Canada actually started doing like a 40-year mortgage.
That too, yeah.
So, so that might help. So there's other ways too that banks and people are going to adapt. So to, like you said, you're never going to pay that house off, but at least you have a place to live.
Yeah.
So
You'll enjoy it just the same, right?
yeah, if you're renting, you'll enjoy it too.
Businesses are more likely to expand, lease space due to reduced borrowing costs for sure, benefiting the commercial markets. I think the interest rate has to drop below 3% before real estate starts moving. Think about most of us have homes with less than 3%. Yes, I think it's like 75 to 80% of the country has sub 3% loan. That's crazy. Even if I have the capital to double my home price, I won't until, yep, less than 4%. I agree. I'm staying put.
But I don't see less than 4%, and I think it's going to be disastrous. Personally, I think after a while, people have to move. Let's say it stays at 5% or 4% for 10 years. Eventually, it's going to have to change hands. People have to move to nursing homes, and I guess they can pass it to their kids. But there will be eventually people are going to start refinancing after a while out of those houses. People are going to, I think, there will be movement after a while. Eventually, if you want to move from Houston, I mean, what are you going to do? Rent out your house?
Yes, but what you're talking about are the desperate few, right? Or you would have to wait like long, like we're talking decade, maybe 10 years or so. You're right, people will eventually move out one way or the other, but that's not going to move the market now.
Yes.
And they want the market to move now because they're desperate, right? So I think they will lower the interest rate, and I think 4 is probably the number that normal primary home buyers will want to hit before they're willing to give up what they already have to move into something else. I know that's true for me, right? When it comes to my primary asset, that's what I'm going to do with my home. So yeah, I think that's where most people are. Yeah, you're right. There'll be desperate people that need to move. They have no choice, but the rest of them are going to stay put.
That's crazy though. I can't imagine it, but you're right based on your analysis. We'll see. It'll be interesting 5 years or 4 years.
Lower rates means investors would move money from other investments to real estate. Homeowners would also look to refinance. It's great for investors, cheaper capital. It's cyclical as it may lead to inflation in the end, which could then necessitate rate cuts. Okay, yeah.
It looks like most people are thinking of more rate cuts.
Yeah, I think overall that's the best of the two choices versus deflation, aka recession, depression. I think the government the leaders will always opt for inflation. They want to control it. Obviously, that's the clear sign. Their goal is 2 to 3%, right? And so I think they will always lean towards inflation, lower rates. They've clearly done that over the last 40 years. The trend line has been lower. Yeah, I don't think they have the guts to really cause a true deflation here. Either one's painful. Either one's painful. It's like a rock and a hard place.
But I definitely know what I'm going to be doing if the interest rate is lower this time. I'm definitely in more position to take advantage than I was.
Correct. And I think that's the whole point of this is like, all right, if we're all saying inflation's coming, all right, what do we do now? If we have agreement, consensus that inflation's coming, you got to position yourself, right? Because that can be painful if you're not rising with or faster than inflation. So Bitcoin,
Hey, Elon Musk. Let's just leave it out. but yeah, I'm almost FOMO in too, but I'm still holding a little bit.
Yep.
But I mean, I think we should stop here.
Yep.
We do have others. I guess we were going to do another one about real assets.
Yep.
We're developing oil and gas, but we're probably going to talk about other things like agriculture, mineral rights, oil and gas, or other real assets, business acquisition. What's going to happen to all those? Do that too. Maybe in a couple of months or so. Maybe after swearing in. Yeah. So, but
awesome.
We still have part 2 of this one too. We'll talk about it. But yeah. So thanks everyone for coming. It's been educational for me. I hope for everyone too, because we all have ideas and we put it out there. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, but it's always good to try to position yourself based on historical data that you've seen, and also based on the asset classes. So you have the free range to move your assets, right? So just plan accordingly. You might get it. Timing the market is also very risky. You might lose out still by missing something. But I think you can also follow the big money too, right? Despite this rise in stock market, I see more billionaires moving money to the side more and more again. So I'm just wondering. So what are they moving the money for?
Thank you guys. Yeah, we really appreciate all the commentary and the additional angles. So we appreciate when it's collaborative like this. So thank you guys again. We look forward to seeing you again in the next 2 weeks. We'll have our next bi-weekly webinar.
Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.
Have a good night.